Hello everybody, Jake, your resident content cowboy here. Yeehaw! Don't know why I popped my glasses off, but I am here with our tier list for today. You can hear in my voice a little bit that I have been casting all weekend. This is going to be my take on what's happening in the competitive scene of Pokemon Unite right now. All weekend we were watching the Aeos Cup for EU Day 1 and the Aeos Cup Finals in North America. Obviously, the world is a big place and different regions play in different ways. We won't exactly know what the meta of this game is like until everything really clashes at Worlds, which is so exciting. So today we are going to be doing, again, my take on the competitive scene in Unite right now, where all of these Pokemon sit. Our tiers here, the S tier. Wait a minute. It's Monday. On Mondays we do tier lists, and on Wednesdays we wear pink.
So don't try to act so innocent. You can take that fake apology and shove it right up your hairy...
Our tiers for today are the S tier, the A tier, the B tier. Fine, whatever. Still got the B tier. The C tier, the D tier Decidueye Memorial tier, and our Zacian tier. Let's start with our Zacian tier right now, and I'll go ahead and throw that Pokemon in. In competitive play, Zacian is either banned out completely, which it is in the Unite Championship Series currently, or it will be banned every single match. There's really no reason to put this Pokemon into any tier. If you want to throw it up into the S tier, that's fine, but currently in most competitive format, you will never ever see this Pokemon. It will only have a shot to make it into any play once it is nerfed and something happens with it. We're just gonna have to see, but for now you're not gonna see Zacian in any game ever. It's just simply too good. So S or Z. Zacian tier. Let's move on. I'm just going to start sorting a lot of things right here. We can probably go by role, as that often seems like a pretty fun way to do it, but also, you know what? There's just so many exciting things to bounce around to. Where to begin? We're talking all-rounders right now, as Zacian being an all-rounder, an all-around broken. Oh, also, by the way, feel free to let me know your thoughts in the comments. I have no problem with anyone disagreeing. Just try to be respectful to each other and be respectful to me or else. But just try to be cool with each other. You'll have better discussions that way, and I think you'll learn a lot more. Lucario, I'm going to start with. Lucario saw some decent play this weekend, and I think this Pokemon is still very, very solid. It feels like a good choice that you could slot into that top path. Lucario, I don't think ever really fully fell off, and into certain enemy team compositions, it can be very strong. Oftentimes, you're going to see this played with power-up punch, but we even saw some extreme speed this weekend, and it went really well. Lucario's just a really solid pick, and it's one of those Pokemon that can dominate its lane, or as Pokemon Unite calls it, its path early. So I think it's a pretty solid all-rounder inside of this meta. Another one that I think is very solid is Garchomp. Garchomp is right up there with Lucario. It might be A tier in that top path. We're seeing a lot of teams pick this up. It definitely feels like it has a different role than Lucario. These may be closer to B, A, or B, but they're pretty solid choices. So what you're seeing with Garchomp is they do well in path early, being able to rip down some of that XP, and then really as soon as they hit 5, they get Dragon Rush, and they can start moving things around so they can secure their own objectives. Once they get the Claw Rush combo, Garchomp not only, becomes a good Pokemon for brawling and fighting, but you can set up big catches with it. I like to think of it as catching something like, boom, I gotcha, big Dragon Claw, Dragon Rush combo, and then you can either continue the fight, you can back out if it's going really poorly, or you can use your Unite move in that moment and start to rip down some of the squishier Pokemon. It has the ability to get to some Pokemon like Espeon and things like that that are kind of tougher for some Pokemon to nail down. I think Garchomp's actually doing really well right now. Charizard. Charizard, I feel like has almost zero competitive viability currently. You could run it in a 5-stack and you could win some games, but I can't imagine why a team would be trying to run Charizard right now. It just feels so completely outclassed in almost every way. I think Char's a no. Machamp, I think, is maybe a B. It's close to these two as well. They're all really close. The only thing, boy, it really is up there. All of these all-rounders are solid, and I didn't think I would be doing this so soon, but I think I am going to do this here. Yeah. 1 second. Here we go. I can't believe it. Oh boy. I'm gonna give ourselves an A- tier. I'm going to give us an A- tier, and I'm going to put Machamp into it. I do think Machamp is a little outclassed. Maybe all of them into the A- tier. We'll see if this tier needed to be here or if it's just a useless tier for us. But I'm going to put Machamp right here. I think it's a little worse than these other two choices. However, its Unite move is absolutely insane. And we've seen some teams having some luck with this Pokemon. We also see some teams running Submission Machamp, which I think is an absolute troll and not very good at all. Let's see. Dragonite gets 0 play. I think it's better than Charizard, but nobody plays this Pokemon. It's really hard to say how well it would do inside this meta because there isn't a single team that I saw play Dragonite at all. I don't think it would do particularly well. It probably has more value than Charizard, but beyond that, yeah. Zarina, I think Zarina is not good. I think Zarina is not good right now. I would stay far away from Zarina. It's way too weak. It's way too squishy, I should say. It could still do some damage, but Zarina is just so squishy, and the meta right now is heavily focused on these long-range casters that just destroy things. I feel like Zarina is in such a tough spot. You could still see a player who's really cracked on Zarina, take people down, but I am not impressed at all with Zarina. I would not run it. Aegislash, I almost called it Azumarill. Aegislash, I think, is probably better than Dragonite and Zarina. It just doesn't get a ton of play either. Its early game was nerfed a little while back, so that has hurt this Pokemon quite a bit. But at the same time, it's still pretty. I think it still has some pretty solid potential. It's hard to find a place to put this Pokemon sometimes. It really is, especially since its early game is not super exciting. Azumarill, I also think, is not good. I saw a team run it. Maybe it's better than Dragonite, Serena. Not that these, the order inside the tiers necessarily matters. It doesn't, but I don't think Azumarill is particularly good. Decent early game. It's just, I don't know. When they nerfed Water Pulse for whatever reason, I feel like it lost a lot of value, strangely enough. And if there was a reality where Zacian is played, that Pokemon just gets eaten alive. Buzzwole actually doing pretty good. Very specific. It might be up here in the A- tier. Lots of teams are finding a ton of success with this, and it's interesting because it's one of those Pokemon that doesn't do particularly well in solo queue. You can see its win rate is not amazing, and it just doesn't perform as well as you want near the end fights necessarily. But early, it's a real menace, and if you can get a nice lead on it, it's just extremely disruptive, and it's hard to stop it from getting all of the XP it wants in path. So I think Buzzwole is actually doing pretty well, and you see teams are really learning to kind of set up these big stun moments. It kind of feels a little like Garchomp in that way with these big catches. I could see someone saying they like Buzzwole more than Garchomp right now, but I feel like teams that are good with Garchomp are really killing it. Tyranitar, oof. Tyranitar is struggling right now. Struggling in competitive play. And I think the thing about it is teams have gotten so good at just spacing this thing out. And when you're not able to get near your opponents with Tyranitar, you feel incredibly useless. And every team that runs Tyranitar has a problem getting Tyranitar the experience it needs to actually do something inside the match. A good team, seeing a Tyranitar on the other team, just shuts it down repeatedly. They starve it out of experience. You'll see games where it ends with, 20-some thousand damage because it could never get going. It couldn't get near its enemies. I think Tyranitar is a really, really rough choice inside the game right now. Scyther is more of a speedster, so I'll save that for a minute here. Scizor, I think, is terrible. I would, if you're running Scizor, I think you're in a lot of trouble. I didn't see, by the way, nobody ran Scizor, but I can't imagine a reality where you run Scizor and get the value out of it that you would really get for almost any other Pokemon. When they nerfed Scizor and Scyther together, it feels like they hurt Scizor so much. You can't believe it. When you see patch notes and you think, oh, that seems like a small buff, or that seems like a small nerf. I thought this was a small nerf. Man, I feel like they somehow gutted this Pokemon. Scizor is just not it right now. And then we've got our Urshifus here. Let's just pop them up here really quick. We can talk about them and get our placement. I think Water Bear is probably A tier. I think it's really, really good. Some teams are finding huge success with it. Other teams, I think, are really dominant with it early, but then they start to run out of steam. And then we have we have rapid strike and we have single strike. I'm going to put single strike here into, I'm going to put it A minus, maybe B. Here's the thing. So here's what I saw with single strike this weekend. I might put it B. What I saw with the single strike build was that teams would pick Urshifu, but they wouldn't build a comp around letting Urshifu shine. It almost felt like they were using it as sort of well, this Pokemon can fight okay, it can do well enough in path, and then if we need a secure, we have it. Whereas before with Urshifu, it felt like the composition was based around setting up moments for Urshifu to boom, wicked blow, and take objectives. Right now, I actually think after its Unite move nerf and seeing teams just not prioritize a composition around it, I think Urshifu struggles, and Wicked Blow is now just a very, very close range Psyshock. So I think Urshifu Wicked Blow still very good, but I'm just not seeing teams build teams around it. And then I think Rapid Strikes is actually really solid here. It does fall off late, but I still think it's a very, very solid build for this Pokemon. Let's move on to our, where do we want to go next? Yeah, let's talk about our defenders right here. Slowbro, let's just start with that. Slowbro is one of the best Pokemon in the game right now, especially inside of draft mode. It's not often you will ban out a Slowbro, although some teams have been banning out Slowbro. You often won't ban it out, so teams get it first or second pick, and it's just amazing. Its Unite move is one of the best in the game. You know, it's a complete shutdown of an enemy Pokemon, and sometimes you absolutely need that. As soon as you're able to grab them and shut them down, the entire fight goes your way. Slowbro, one of the best Pokemon in the game, and it's not banned out enough to, you know, really stress about it. So amazing, and a lot of teams get to pick it up. Snorlax, I think is pretty good. I think Snorlax is pretty good. I think maybe A- is a fair place to put this Pokemon. I've seen teams have some success with it. I wouldn't say it's one of the best. Well, it's one of the better defenders inside the game. There are a couple that seem to outshine it for different reasons, which we'll talk about. But I think Snorlax is still a really solid choice, and a team with a good Snorlax wouldn't be too upset. Crustle is better than people think. It's actually getting some play. It's kind of maybe B tier, maybe it's C tier. It's a hard one. The thing is, defenders are good. And we did see some teams play Crustle, and they had some decent success with it. I still think teams are figuring out how to actually make Crustle work in their comps. But the fact of the matter is, there are just better defenders inside the game right now. So whether you put it B or C, you probably won't be drafting Crustle just because there are 4 other defenders or something like that that you'd rather be drafting. I'll let it sit B for now, but I might move this guy a little bit right here. Blastoise. Blastoise is A. It might even be S. Well, no, it's not S. It's not that good, but Blastoise is amazing. I think it's so good. Its Unite move is incredible. We're seeing Surf Blastoise. We're seeing Rapid Spin Blastoise. All of it providing tons of value to your team. It's great. It's easily one of the best defenders inside the game. It feels a little bit like it has a slightly different role where it feels more like it's a disruptor tank almost. It kind of brawls really hard with the rapid spin build. But yeah, Blastoise is awesome, and teams are having great success with it. Blastoise is doing really, really well. Let's see who is next. This tier list, for whatever reason, has Wiggly with a green background, even though it is a supporter. It is a tanky defender-like Pokemon, so it's fair that it should have something like this, but it is a supporter. We'll talk about it in a minute. Mammo. Mammo's actually not doing too bad. It's better than Crustle, and a couple teams were running it, and there's some really interesting things you can do with it. You know, Icicle Crash gives you the ability to sort of get rid of the passives on Pokemon like Espeon, Gardevoir, Glaceon, things like that. You're able to get rid of these passives at range using Icicle Crash, so it has that excellent poke right there. It's also just super strong and disruptive, and yeah, a few teams actually having a really good time with Mammo, which was cool to see. I think now that Mammo's B, I do have to move Crustle probably down to C. Sorry, Crustle buddy, but you're not as good as Mammo, I wouldn't say. Greedent. I'm not seeing teams run Greedent. I'm just not seeing anyone play it. I think it's probably B. I'm just gonna put it here. It's such a weird role though, you know, it's kind of like a Sableye role in a weird way. It's just this, it's very disruptive. It does have good secure. It's such a hard Pokemon to put on a list. It's so specific, and I feel like your team would need to be built around it. In general, I think I'm just going to put it C, only because I'm not seeing anyone play it. If teams are starting to play it again, maybe we could talk more about Greedent, but I'm really seeing no one pick this Pokemon up, even though I think you could probably do something with Greedent competitively. Trevenant, I think, had not great success in EU, but it had much better success in NA. I think NA knows how to play Trevenant a lot better than EU does. At least that's what it seemed like from the group stages. We'll see how different that might be when EU gets together for their finals. Perhaps we just didn't see a ton of teams playing it that well, but I think Trevenant is still amazing. If we were to say knock it down one tier because Slowbro is better, I could agree with that. But in general, Trevenant is just doing super well inside the game right now. Really solid. And Gudra and Lapras coming to the game are not playable inside of tournaments yet. So I don't know exactly where they will fall. I will say Lapras probably has more competitive viability than Gudra, just from playing it and seeing, you know, its kit, seeing how it kind of moves, the disruption it's able to cause, things like that. Gudra is... I don't think Gudra's going to see a ton of competitive play right away, and I think it's probably its biggest problem is just that it struggles early, and you don't really love a defender that struggles early when you compare it to something like Slowbro, who evolves at level 4 and has Water Gun early, so it has amazing secure. Like Snorlax has great secure. Mamo is really good in lane, so I think Gudra is going to struggle competitively in general, but we've seen no competitive play yet for this Pokemon. Great. Those are all of our defenders. Let's move on to our supporters. We were just talking about them because we got some green backgrounds right here. Let's start with Wiggly, who I actually think is doing okay right now. I don't think a lot of teams are prioritizing it, but when you see a team that is good with Wigglytuff, they're setting up some big moments, especially given that, you know, Sleep can give you the ability to land some of these really powerful special attack damage moves from our Pokemon here. I think Wiggly's actually not doing too bad. Its Unite move has a better cooldown too right now, so you'll see that in more fights. Not amazing, but not too bad. Clefable, I think, is okay. I'm not seeing too many teams run it. I think it looks like there are better supporter options here, but it does heal pretty well. I'm going to put it in this B tier as well. You might be able to argue that it's A-. I'll see kind of where the rest of the supporters shake out, but it's good. It has good healing, you know, pretty good range, good Unite move. It's solid, maybe A-. It's really, all the supporters are really good right now. Well, here's an interesting one. I'm going to put Mr. Mime B. I think Mr. Mime has fallen off pretty hard, but it is still not bad. And every once in a while, you will see a team pick it up because it's a comfort pick for them. And Mime is just good. Its Unite move is good. Confusion is good. It's not where it was. It has fallen very far from the S tier, but I don't think it's a terrible choice. Eldegoss, I think, is great. I'm putting it up in the A tier. I think LD is amazing right now. So good early, just really able to punish any Pokemon that try to walk across and stack. At the same time, it's useful at a very low level. It obviously runs experience share to make sure that its ally is doing well. The heals are great. The shields are great. Everything is great on LD. I think this Pokemon's killing it right now. Blissey. Didn't see much Blissey in EU. NA loved Blissey, and it was excellent. It was excellent, if you will. Because of the eggs. Blissey was doing really, really well, and that was cool to see. I don't think it's necessarily an S tier choice. I think a lot of the supporters are so good that it's really hard to say one is like leagues above the others necessarily. But yeah, it's one of the best Pokemon in the game in a lot of ways. Its healing is amazing. Its Safeguard is amazing. Its Unite move is insane. Egg Bomb can apparently steal Rayquaza still. So yeah, Blissey's doing just fine. Hoopa, I will say Hoopa's S tier. I think Hoopa's nuts, and you see a lot of teams ban it out. EU was very, very on top of banning out Hoopa, and I think for good reason. The one issue in the game is you only have one ban, and even if you ban out Hoopa, they can still take Blissey, they can still have LD, they could have Clefable. Like, there are so many good supporters, so for that reason, sometimes teams just, they can't ban out Hoopa. I need to ban out an attacker. I need to ban out, you know, the enemy team is really good with Dodrio. We have to ban that out. So Hoopa seeing a lot of play, doing extremely well. And the people who are good on Hoopa are just, oh, so beautiful. It's, when you're watching a master level Hoopa player, and I don't mean master rank in Pokemon Unite, I'm talking, you know, top 1%, 0.1% of players in the world on this Pokemon, it is a thing of beauty. Hoopa is crazy good. And of course, its Unite move is disgusting. Let's see. Sableye. Sableye is actually doing really well. I think A- is fair because its role is so odd. And it's kind of hanging out in this extremely disruptive supporter role. The stuns are insane on knockoff. You're seeing some people run the feint attack build where they're, throwing the little fake Aeos energy around the map. It gives you essentially vision for different places in the map. And it also can set up moments where, Pokemon are just slowed and taking more damage than they expect. It's a pretty cool build. And then I've also seen players just go full disruption still, and they're going knockoff and they're going Confuse Ray. I was watching Red Love's Sableye this weekend from Spinal. If you didn't see that on the main broadcast, you should check it out because it was so mean. I love seeing it. Sableye, not played by a ton of teams, but the teams who know how to utilize it are doing really well with it. And then you have Comfey, who, so for whatever reason, EU doesn't like Comfey and NA likes Comfey and they know what to do with it. So I think what's happening is North America has, some players who are just extremely good at carrying. And because they're really good at carrying, if you put something like this around them, you kind of take something that's broken and make it more broken. That's what we talk about all the time with this Pokemon. I actually think EU is kind of sleeping on this, or maybe it's just, it doesn't fit into the way they're liking to play this Pokemon, because I did not see much of it. To be fair, we don't get to see all the games, right, on broadcast, so maybe more teams are running it than I would expect. But this kind of felt like EU with Trevenant as well, where it's like, it just doesn't feel like EU's playing Trevenant the way NA is. Same thing with Comfey. I do think this Pokemon is still absurd. It might be closer to A than S, but depending on what your opponent's going to try to play, if you know that they're going to want to grab Dodrio and Comfey together, I mean, you might even ban it out. So it's really unbelievable. It's hard to place this Pokemon. It's either S or A. It's so good. Man, I might even say S for now. Honestly, it's kind of crazy good. I just think you have to have a team that specifically wants to play around this Comfey. You have to have that. Maybe it's A. I don't know. It's really close between these two. It's really close. Maybe it's A. All right, let's see. Moving on over to let's go with Speedsters. We were just talking about Speedsters. I think Dodrio, especially in draft, you see a lot of teams, if they recognize their opponents have a good Dodrio, they will ban this Pokemon out. If it is left open, you could see a lot of teams snatch it up. It's really good. It's the most competitive speedster by miles and miles and miles. I mean, it just outruns the competition in a big way. It's sort of exactly, in my opinion, this is exactly how you want a speedster balanced. Speedsters are hard to balance. You want it to be really good, but at the same time, it's not that if you don't have it, you necessarily lose or something like that. It's a top choice and a top banned out choice. Banned a ton. Dodrio's doing pretty well. Gengar is not good. No. Don't play Gengar. Don't do this. It's maybe it's C. I don't know. It's not good competitively. It's so easy to counter this Pokemon when you know what's going on and you have communication. Gengar is a pub stomper, a noob stomper, a solo queue monster. Gengar does really well when your opponents are not coordinated. When they are coordinated, I don't think Gengar fares well at all. Absol does better than Gengar, in my opinion. It might even be B tier. It doesn't get much play at all, though, to be fair. But I do think Absol is better than Gengar. I think it's harder to counter Absol, even though what Absol's doing is also pretty telegraphed. The fact of the matter is, you're probably not seeing either of these Pokemon picked very often at all. Teams are picking up Talonflame again, which I think is... I honestly don't think it's very good. I'm not sure why we're seeing so much Talon, but we are seeing a little bit of Talon out of EU. I know some players are really cracked on this Pokemon. I'm not seeing a ton of value on it. You could say it's B, possibly, but I just feel like for this role, I would just be playing in a different style. But, you know, every team has their own way of playing, and maybe they can make something work with this Pokemon. I don't see a ton of value for it competitively, honestly, even when a player is really good with it. Zeraora is absolutely useless. Its leveling is terrible. No one plays it. No one would play it. But when I say no one would play it, I mean inside of this current, you know, meta of the game and the way Zeraora is, no one would play it. If things changed, if Zera's leveling changed, something around, you know, around this Pokemon changed, you could definitely see teams pick it up. But in its state right now, it's no. Absolutely not. Zorororog, probably A-. I think it's really good. It's one of those speeds. It's like the closest to Dodrio, I think, I would say. Well, there might be another one that's pretty close. It's the closest to Dodrio, I would say. It doesn't do the exact same thing. This is more of a burst damage assassin, and it also has the ability to really dash in and chase down some Pokemon that are hard to get to. Probably better than almost anyone in the entire game. This can get into that back line of your opponents, and you're able to pick up huge KOs. I think because of that, Zoroark is actually doing pretty well, but you know, it does remind me a lot of Sableye, where you really need the right pilot. If someone's great with Zoroark, you'll see them pull it out in some of these games. And then we have Scyther, which really didn't get a lot of play at all. Like at all. I was shocked. Scyther's back, and no one's playing Scyther. And the couple times I did see it, it was doing okay. Looking at these three, if I had to say Scyther, Talonflame, Absol, I recognize that Scyther, by the way, is technically an all-rounder, but its stats speak otherwise. It is a speedster. If I was looking at these three, if I had to pick one of them to be on my team, I would move these two down to the C tier. I would say Scyther's better than Talon or Absol. I don't think any of them are doing that great. You'd have to have a pretty specific squad to make these Pokemon work, but some teams are trying it. I don't know. I might just move these two down to the C tier. They all could be C at some point. I really thought Scyther could come back and have more of an impact, but it is not because of some of the really, you know, incredible stun-heavy Pokemon like Trevenant. Blastoise chases it down really well. Slowbro makes its life pretty miserable. And then we have these attackers who are just crushing it right now. Let's get into some of our attackers. Let's start with Cinderace, Greninja, and Dragapult. These Pokemon are really not getting any play. The ranged ADCs, the auto attack damage, the attack damage carry Pokemon really are getting no play at all because the special attackers are controlling the entire game right now. Slick Spoon is just such a good item. The special attackers do insane burst damage, and these Pokemon have kind of been left in the dust. You could probably make a team and win with some of these. They're not terrible. They're just seeing almost no play. Like, really, no one is picking up ADCs right now. So it's just kind of the interesting place that we are in inside of Pokemon Unite, where special attackers are really ruling the roost. Let's take a look at some of our... Oh, and Duraludon. Duraludon, no one plays Duraludon, period. They just... No one plays it. I don't even think it's that bad. Nobody plays it. I mean, I guess the question is, what kind of team composition do you want to play with this Pokemon? Will you have the same success that you will with some of these special attackers? And the answer is no, probably not. Decidueye is the only one of these that I think kind of breaks out of the mold a little bit. I'll move it up probably to the B tier, maybe A-, B, somewhere in here. Again, this one is more specific than the other ADCs, but it has Spirit Shackle. The fact that it can do that kind of damage at that kind of range means that this Pokemon is still very viable. And what I'm really talking about is it kind of has the kit of a special attacker in some ways, just with the auto attacks. Yeah, B or A-. One of these two is a fair place to put this Pokemon. Maybe A-, but you have to be extremely careful what kind of team composition you put it in. I'm going to keep it B because I just think the special attackers are better right now. Let's get two out of the way that are not better right now. Alolan Ninetales is awful, and Pikachu is... I mean, you could see a build with either of these. You could have sort of disruption and support attackers, Pikachu, A9. No one's playing them. I just think A9's so bad. I think it's so bad. The problem with A9 is the things it does a few things pretty well, but as the match goes on, the idea that you would have an A9 over almost anything on this roster is kind of, yeah, it's just not going to happen. You know, good early, It is disruptive. You do get some stuns. I know some teams were trying to run it. I think this thing is it's a can I please lose button by playing this Pokemon. I think it's not good. I actually think Pikachu's better, even though it gets 0 play as well. No one is playing Pikachu. I think Pikachu is probably better than Alolan Ninetales. I think it's, it has a faster Unite move charge. It does have, some incredible single target disruption. That being said, no one's playing either. Okay, moving on. Why? No reason to talk too long about a Pokemon that literally no one picks up. I've got a spicy take coming later here. I'm not seeing anyone play Cram. I can't remember if Cram was banned out. I was kind of looking earlier to see if this Pokemon was banned. I thought it was. Yes, it actually was banned out. That's what I thought. I'm just going to put it down here in the Zacian tier. I think it's actually pretty good. Especially, dive Cram, people can do some incredible stuff. The Unite move is pretty strong, but it was banned out. I don't see anyone playing it, so we're just going to put it down here for now because it's really hard to say what it would do if it wasn't banned out, but I bet it would be somewhere up in here, right there. Guardy, not doing too bad. I think Guardy's pretty good. B or A? A minus? Excuse me, B or A minus. Somewhere in here. Maybe B. Maybe A minus. Good Pokemon. Does a lot of damage. Pretty solid. You need to get some experience early, but besides that, the special attackers, like the long range special attackers, are crushing it right now, and Guardy's doing great. Let's see. Mew. I think Mew is broken. I still think it's insane. The only reason I wouldn't put Mew S is because of other special attackers that I'd also put S, which is Glaceon and Espeon. I think Mew, Glaceon, and Espeon competitively right now, these three are absolute monsters for slightly different reasons, but they all do absurd burst damage at absurd range. Espeon, especially in the hands of a good player, it just outsecures everything all game. You're seeing teams give it the blue buff early and walk down to path at level 4, so it already has Psyshock, and it's just it's absolutely insane. Like, what a crazy Pokemon. You'll see teams ban it out too. It's that good. Glaceon also is one of those Pokemon where you're probably not going to waste a ban on this Pokemon, and that's why you just see it all the time, and its damage is absurd. I think Glaceon is nuts. And then Mew, very similar to these two, maybe a little less damage output from time to time. Its secure is still pretty strong, like Glaceon and Espeon, but it also is so difficult to punish and track down. It's just awesome. Mew's awesome. S tier for sure for me. I think Delphox is the only Pokemon. This is probably my most controversial take on the whole list. I honestly could maybe even move it to B. And I don't know if it was the nerf to this Pokemon. It could be. Could be the Flame Charge nerf. Could be the Mystical Fire nerf. It also could just be that people are figuring out how to play around this Pokemon. It might even be B. I have to be honest. It could even be a B tier choice right now. Not bad, but it's just, I am not seeing these Delphoxes do very well. They really aren't. For whatever reason, people are just, they've found ways to shut this thing down. You're seeing some people try to pull out Fire Spin, and I think with a very specific team composition, there's some cool things around that, but just not having the ability to move is so unbelievably, it's so constraining for some of these Pokemon, and you're just setting it up to get in some really tough situations and not be able to get itself out. I think the nerfs to Delphox clearly have hurt it enough. I'll keep it A minus for now. Its Unite move is still insane, and you have it for every single fight, but I just feel like teams are outplaying this thing like crazy. Venusaur, I actually think, is A tier Pokemon right now. Comfey, Blissey, Clefable. There are lots of things that you could do with this Pokemon. You still can just get it nice and fed and make it that huge raid boss. And something that you'll notice is when you know you're going to be playing into huge frontline tanky Pokemon like Slowbro and Trevenant and things like that, Venusaur gets a ton of value because it's really easy to fight them, move around them, dodge what they're trying to do, get your Giga Drains. They're always there for a big Giga Drain so that you can continue to restore your health. I actually think because we're seeing so many strong tanks like that, so many strong defenders, that Venusaur is playing pretty well. And also, you're just seeing that Comfey Collar get thrown on it, and it's raid boss Venusaur time. Sylveon, our final Pokemon on the list. I actually think Sylveon's still really good. I think Sylveon's another Eevee that's just really good. All the Eevees are insane right now. So this is what I mostly think from watching all of these games here. If I were to move some things around, not just like the end of tier list moving some things around, but I could see an argument that Greninja is possibly a little better, maybe even Dragapult. It's hard. The attack damage carries are just completely outshined by what's happening up here on our tier list with all of these amazing special attackers. They're doing so well in the game right now. I could honestly see Delphox moving down a tick right here, possibly Scyther moving down a tick. Mime is probably better than people are giving it credit for, but it also isn't getting a lot of play. Neither is Sword. Wicked Blow, I feel like, is underperforming. Again, I think that's just because people are not putting it in the right team compositions. Everything in the D tier, I think putting it on your team is just asking to lose, basically. Yeah, Pikachu nobody plays. I mean, if you want to just, you know, jump, you could. Nobody's playing it. I also think Dragonite, Azumarill, you really don't see these Pokemon at all. And then Tyranitar is better, I think, than the tier it's in some ways, but it's also just being completely shut down. At this point, I feel like everyone has figured out how to play around this Pokemon, and the meta has evolved to this point where things are just either really slippery, Dodrio, Mew, things like that, or everything is just able to zone you out with massive range, like Glaceon, Espeon, things like that. Just kite it, as they say. Well, there you go. There is my take on what's happening competitively right now. I can't wait to see what EU does with some of this. And honestly, hey, thank you, whoever followed on whatever platform that was. Thanks. I can't wait to see what EU does with this when they go to their finals. And honestly, I cannot wait for a balance change because I really want to see this list get shaken up, and I really want to see this thing, Zacian here, get moved around. Okay, now time for this. Yeah, like I was saying, Zacian is just, you know, it's the greatest thing out there. The only thing that can really counter it is Tyranitar and Alolan Ninetales together. If you have the damage, the true damage, something that can actually fight in its face, and then you have a Pokemon like Alolan Ninetales, you can do something about Zacian. Otherwise, you really can't. The only other option is, you know, the dog's got a sword in its mouth. It also could deal, it also has trouble dealing with a sword over here. Aegislash, very, very good into Zacian. Only the Shadow Claw build, though, the Shadow Claw Iron Head build, if you time your Iron Heads correctly, you will be able to tank the entire amount of Zacian's damage, just one big tank of it, and then you get right back into Shadow Clawing and doing some damage right here. Very, very solid stuff. Of course, as we mentioned before, we have our Decidueye Memorial tier. We have our Zacian tier that Zacian would be in, but the only Pokemon in there right now are ones that can't even play in the game. There you go. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Let me know what you think in the comments. I love you.